your music doesn't do one of three things, then it stands very little chance of ever getting signed to a music library and even less chance of ever making it onto a TV show or any type of media in what we call sync placements. And in this video, I'm going to go over what those three things are that your music needs to accomplish and how you can strategize appropriately as you are making your music to make sure that you are staying in one of those lanes and increasing the chances that your music is signable by a music library and furthermore usable by a TV show. Because at the end of the day, what matters the most to us as professional composers is making money off of our craft. Otherwise, we could consider ourselves amateur hobbyists, which is totally fine if that's the bucket that you fall into. But I'm assuming most people here on my channel are looking for ways to monetize their music. And so you have to be very strategic with the way you make your music. So let's get into it. Hello, rock stars. My name is Matt Vanderbo, and I've been composing music for TV shows for around 15 years now, and in that time I've racked up somewhere north of 35,000 placements of my music on closing in on now 1,500 different TV shows, which is hard to believe that there are that many shows in existence. But I've been doing this a long time and I've made plenty of mistakes along the way, and the reason I even have this channel is to give you guys the information that you need so that you don't put in all those years of wasted effort that I put in the very beginning of my career just because I did not know what I was doing and I was just trying to make music that sounded cool, which is fine in its own right, but cool music is not necessarily usable music. So far too often we make stuff that we think sounds cool, but then just lives out its entire lifespan in the dustbin of musical obscurity in your hard drive because no one ever signs it, it never gets placed, and all those hours you put into it just turns into wasted effort. So the way that we can remedy this problem is to be very strategic about the way we make music, and furthermore, be very strategic about the way you think of music before you even sit down to write it. And since this is the Music 102 Before You Compose course, then everything that I teach you here is the stuff that has to be in your mind before you even sit down to write a single note. So the one and only, the great Robin Frederick, who's very well known in sync music circles, in her book, Shortcuts to Writing Music for Film and TV, she identifies three purposes to musical cues or vocal songs that have the intention of being synced into TV shows. And so you have to do one of these three things with your music. The first one is the music must bolster the emotional weight of a scene. Now, emotions can run the gamut. There are thousands of them. Typically, music libraries will have a list of, 50 to 100 that you can choose from, unless it's kind of a choose your own adventure and you got to come up with these yourself. Just think of things from bittersweet to heartbroken to mischievous to playful, lively, joyful, happy, what else? Aggressive, angsty. These are all moods and emotions that our music can supply. And when our music is done correctly and it is paired up with a scene on video, then that scene really comes to life with all of the joy or all of the angst or all of the aggression, whatever the mood is that you created. That is really going to bubble out of the video if you have done it correctly. And if you haven't done it correctly, then your music is going to be bypassed every single time for someone who did do it correctly. So number one was your music must increase the emotional weight of a scene. Okay, number two is your music must enhance the energy of a scene. Notice I didn't say action of a scene because not everything needs to be action oriented. They can be. I mean, you could have those big percussive drums and, think about some guy taking his canoe down a waterfall or something dangerous is happening. You got the big action drums. That is part of energy, but energy could also be something as subtle as nervous energy, where you've got something pulsing and ominous happening in, let's just say, like a haunted house show or some type of paranormal program, or just anything where there is supposed to be an undercurrent of unease or anxiety. Well, nervous energy is a type of energy, and it's not going to be over the top and not going to be bombastic, but it is energetic in its own right. Okay, you got that? So that was number two. Number three is your music must create a sense of setting. And what I mean by setting is a place or a time or a culture. So your music could instantly take us to a different geographical location on the planet Earth, and that would be one way to accomplish this. Or it could take us back in time to a medieval period or prehistoric times. Or it could even take us into something that's happening right now, for example, inside a circus tent or inside a haunted house. And sometimes we even create a setting by having some type of cultural element within the music, even if that culture was from somewhere else, but the show is happening right here in America. Okay, so do you have all three in your head? Let's go over them again. Number one, your music must increase the emotional weight of a scene. Number two, it must increase the energy of a scene. Or number three, it must add to some type of setting. Now, here's the thing. You only need to do one of those three things in your music to make it have a chance at being successful. You don't need to do all three in one piece. Now, sometimes there can be some overlap. So I imagine there are many of occasions where you've accomplished two or even all three of these objectives in one piece, but don't make that your aim. Just do one thing and do it well. So that's a recap from the previous video I did back in the Music 101 course, but now I want to tell you why this is so important to your workflow. Because again, this is all about how we strategize our music before we even begin writing it. So now that you've got this fresh in your mind that you have to do one of these three things to make usable music, then you need to identify which one you are going to do before you sit down at your computer or your piano or your guitar or whatever instrument you use to make music. Have a goal in mind before you start playing. We always need to approach music making with a plan. As Al Pacino once said in the old movie Dick Tracy, a man without a plan is not a man. Well, I suppose that's a little bit outdated now in 2025, but the concept is still very important. That's what I want you to take away from this. A musician without a plan is going to be a floundering hobbyist rather than a professional. So create a plan, and when you sit down at your computer, you know that you are going to make, let's just say, a mischievous cue. Then when you start making that music, do not deviate from that plan. Don't run off chasing the muse or going down rabbit holes. I would say 9 times out of 10, when you start going down rabbit holes, you end up on a path far from where you originally intended to be on, resulting in music that is not even remotely close to what you wanted to make. So stick to the plan. Another reason it's so important to identify which of those three things you want to do before you write the music is that oftentimes your choice of one of those three things is going to dictate the instrumentation that you use when you start making music. For example, if you are trying to make a mischievous cue or something sneaky or scandalous, then you would probably turn to pizzicato strings or something that's a little bit more lighthearted and give some quirky type of energy. Maybe some bassoon, bass clarinet, and percussion that goes. If you want to make ominous music, you're probably going to gravitate to those low synths that go. My point here is that by knowing what you plan to do with your music before you start to make it, that will tell you the instrumentation you need, which is going to save you a tremendous amount of time as you're sitting in your chair. You won't need to be searching for things if you already know what those things are that you need because you were that good with having your plan in advance. So not only does this increase your chances of success, but it also makes your composition time much faster. So now I'm going to give you guys a quick homework assignment, and I want you to go back to your last handful of cues or songs that you've written and just play the first 30 seconds or so and see if your music accomplishes one of the three purposes of a music cue. Does it create some type of mood or emotion? Or does it add some type of energy? Or does it take us to some place? If it does one of those three things and it happens very quickly, then you probably have a good contender on your hands. But if it doesn't do any of those three things, then you've essentially made music that will not return you any money in the future. So always have a plan and stick to the plan and make sure you're doing one of the three things that your music needs to do. All right, enough said. Let's finish this video with a joke. Here's the old button again. Let's do it.
What is a snowman tantrum called? A meltdown.
Hey, that one was pretty good, actually. I'll catch you rock stars later. Toodles.